So here we are. I'm with Karl Quek, who is one of our senior management team members from TFT Malaysia. And Karl is visiting Switzerland at the moment for our Country Heads Lab, where we bring all of our country heads from around the world together. And last Wednesday night, he told a fascinating story about some of the work that he was involved in the palm oil industry. And what was interesting for me was the way that he shared how people had been working away thinking they were doing a great job, and later to find actually that there were serious issues in the way they were treating their workers. And not out of a malicious way, but just more or less, well, we don't know. And Karl, let me say Karl can share that story. So Karl, just give us a bit of background to the story and what happened there when you visited this palm oil plantation.
It was just like any other assessment that we carry out for our clients. And this time around, it was palm oil mill in Peninsular Malaysia. And what we did over a couple of days was going out to try to have an understanding of how the palm oil mill, as well as some of the supplying estates, fare against our clients' policy.
So just on the client's policy, this is a lot of TFT members are working on this idea of no deforestation, where they want to make sure that the palm oil that comes into their products is not linked to deforestation. But the other side is no exploitation of people, where they want to make sure that the workers in the plantations are treated well and the surrounding communities are treated well.
Yeah, in a very bigger agenda of no deforestation and no exploitation, in the work that we do come across small wins we are often very proud of, and it's just something that keeps us going in that larger journey of achieving no deforestation and no exploitation. So the story goes for us as normal. We go about doing our visits, and this story particularly focuses on the water issue on a particular estate. What we found on the estate was that this estate was doing water analysis on the water supply going into the labour quarters as well as the executive quarters. The estate was relying on a natural water source, which was a small stream, and they were gathering it into a catchment area in which they run the normal processes of filtering and all the chemicals that goes into the water to make it potable. We found that in the water analysis that was carried out a couple of months before we arrived at the site, it showed that there was actually 5 elements: turbidity, aluminium, E. coli, coliform. It exceeded the permissible levels. But what we found very disturbing was that the actions being taken by the company was really inadequate. It was seen that the company was really just, first of all, doing the water analysis just purely out of compliance to a certain...
to a certification standard. They were certified under the RSPO system. And part of the requirement was that they had to do water analysis. So they were doing water analysis, and the story continues.
And so, so being part of a requirement for that certification, so they did the water analysis, but disturbingly, there was not enough emphasis on the follow-up of that water analysis. So we asked the management, having found out that 5 elements were beyond the parameters, we tried to understand what were the actions taken, and was clearly inadequate, simply because when we looked at records of the hospital assistant at the estate, it was quite clear workers were getting diarrhea. Still, every month there was an occurrence. So what we decided to do during the assessment was, it was one of our major findings among a couple of others. But myself and the team, we took the time really just to sit down with the management to talk about the importance and the urgency of improving the water quality. And luckily enough, myself and another colleague of mine, William, both of us came from the plantation background, and we have dealt with similar issues, made similar mistakes also as well. And the discussion we had was more of not so much criticizing, rather more a constructive, more like, you can say, a sort of like a peer review, just sharing of experiences, sharing of some of the mistakes that we have done, hoping that they would not repeat the same. And really, in that conversation, really stressing the urgency and the importance of just really moving and follow up and just really doing the right thing. And I think what the management took away from that conversation was, we feel quite good about it, because just after the assessment, the management decided to start working on it. So what they did was, they brought in potable water from a neighboring estate to be supplied to the workers' quarters. And they made it very clear in the communications to them, the workers, that all normal water supply is only to be used for washing, and this is for the water supply brought in from the neighbouring estates for drinking. So we solved the issue there and then. You
had a good chat to them. You didn't shame them. You weren't about trying to shame them or make them feel embarrassed in any way, but you were really just pointing out that something wasn't going well, and there were consequences of it, i.e., people were getting sick, and this wasn't right. You didn't have to talk to, as you say, any SOP. You didn't have to talk to any checkboxes. It was just, well, it's probably not a good thing to be giving the people who are working with you water that's going to put them in hospital. So you really touched something very personal about their own values, it sounds.
Yes, exactly. So I think when you look at it at the point of view, at a human level, I think it all makes sense that if the water is not potable, it's something that we need to address right now, right then. I mean, yes, we can bring in experts and consult on increasing the water quality, but we cannot discount the major importance of water itself, that people are relying it every day. So what the management did, which I think is commendable, is that they addressed the situation right there and then, bringing in water, making it clear to the workers that this is unsafe and this is safe. And a couple of months that followed after that, they went and looked for a water consultant, and the water consultant analyzed what was going on, and they found out that the old piping was running quite close to an old septic tank, hence the E. coliform. And what they did was they really invested some resources in repiping works. They cleaned up the water tank, they cleaned up the catchment area, and that whole process took a couple of months. And through that couple of months, they were quite lucky also, because after they did some of the remedial works, the health department came by to do a quick check.
And this was random. I mean, these are random checks. It wasn't as if anyone had organised for them to go and get checked.
Yes, I think it's a random check. And thankfully enough, because of the couple of months ago, we sat down, we had that chat, and just the basic actions that they took, I think they were in a better position. The health department also gave further advice on how they could further improve on the water quality. And just fast forwarding a couple months, we visited them in August. We went back on the ground in December for a follow-up visit. And when we were there, it was quite clear that they really took measures. Repiping works, new tanks in place, new chemical dosing pumps, and the results of the water quality showed that it was very good. They still continue to further invest in that water quality by putting up in the future plans to install a sand filter. We were quite convinced when we went down for a follow-up visit in December. It was quite clear. The management is doing all that they can. And when William, who was with me during the first assessment, he was looking around the workers' quarters, and he was invited by one of the workers to come into his home, and they sat down for a cup of tea, and the worker personally thanked William, thank you so much for addressing this issue, and a couple of other corrective actions that we took.
Well, I love this story. I think it's a terrific story, and it's a great case where, the management are not evil people. These are good people, in fact, and they're busy working away with their day job. They've got a set of boxes they need to tick under the certification scheme, and they tick them all. Each and every one of those boxes were ticked. But what they hadn't done was to go beyond what the standard allowed and prescribed, and actually looked deeply into the analysis of the water. They had water analysis, so they ticked the box. But the fact that the water analysis showed that there was problems with the water didn't seem to have occurred to them. And even though their workers were being hospitalised, they didn't put two and two together. And yet, a simple approach of you guys coming in and having a bit of a look after the audit from the certification scheme, no doubt. You guys have just come in with a different approach, and how's it going? And well, no doubt, given your plantation experience, you had an eye for these things, which is great. But I think the key thing is that you've sat down with the management and you haven't, got your stick out and beaten them. You've just talked to them as human beings. You've touched what's human inside them, and I'm sure, and it sounds like their follow-up action is good evidence of this, that they were very upset. They were shocked that they had allowed this to happen. Yeah. So it sounds like they've then gone out and put serious investment in there, and things are being turned around. And I think the key thing, a really nice thing you said the other night when you presented this story to us, was that there was no article in the paper about this. There was no pat on the back. We didn't save any forests, which tends to be the main focus. You didn't solve any conflict between a community and a company, so that's a big ticket item as well. But just small actions can change people's lives, as evidenced by the fact of these workers talking to William and thanking him for just raising this issue. So I think it's a terrific story, mate, and good on you and the team for doing it, and good on the plantation company for taking the action.
What more can we say?
What more can we say? A great story. Thanks very much, Karl.